We've reached the witching hour. We're about to start the Health and Wellbeing Board of the 17th of June 2026, and you're all very welcome here today. I'm going to start off by saying it's a long time since we've been here, and a day is a long time in politics, never mind months. And since we've been here, we have a new Secretary of State for Health. We were working towards West Streeting, who I thought was doing a really good job. He was a very, very firm favourite of fluoridation of drinking water, having sanctioned an expansion in the northeast. So he was my best friend, but he's not there anymore. So who's replaced him? James Murray. We don't really know a lot about James Murray, except he did give a talk recently, and his number one priority was reducing waiting lists, although the neighbourhood plan was number 3 on his list. He declares himself to be a lifelong NHS supporter, largely based on the fact that some years ago he developed a condition called myasthenia gravis. And that's an autoimmune condition where your eyelids start to droop and you can't see properly, and then you go on medication for the rest of your life. So he says that because he's had those symptoms, it's given him that love for the NHS. So I think although the experience may not be there, the passion and the love probably is. So we'll have to get to know what James has got to offer us as we move forward and take it from there. So we do meet against an ever-changing landscape. Those of you who, like me, would have been keen to see a national prostate screening programme come into being were left disappointed, highlighted by Jeremy Clarkson this morning on the TV, declaring that he had aggressive prostate cancer. And again, men's health, one of those things that we're going to focus on in the years to come, Vivian, the years to come. And we didn't lose completely in that there was 2 programs that were introduced, one for screening for people with a BRCA2 gene, which we know gives a predisposition to prostate cancer, and a population of Black men between 45 and 74, who we equally know. So this is almost like a targeted screening. The cost of all-out screening and the number of false positives would have been such that it would have made the programme pretty well untenable. So this is the best way of introducing a targeted, specific programme for early detection of prostate cancer in those most at risk. So I welcome it, and I think it's a good start. And if we expand it later, then that's good too. One of the things that we're going to give a little bit of priority to this afternoon, and we don't typically often give it as much priority as it should be, is the work programme. Those of you will know that over the last year there was a reduction of the number of times we met to 4, and the last time I was chair here we were up at 10. We were the most prodigious health and wellbeing board in the country. The 4 was out of good intention to make them more, less is more, but we have since then for the coming year increased it to 6, and we'll keep a flexible view on how we move forward with that and the mixture of joint strategic needs assessments with workshops. So I think we will be looking at where's all the joint strategic needs assessments, and I will be looking for people to put forward items that they feel should be on that work programme. I myself have put forward the physical, mental, short, medium and long-term effects of flooding on our populations throughout the county, which we know very, very little about. More recently, I've sent a bit paper with regards to How much do we know about the needs of the migrant and the asylum populations of Nottinghamshire? Where is it documented in GSNAs, etc.? Kelvin put forward that we should do more on Stop the Bleed campaigns. Now, I want you all to think, I want you all to be creative, because every one of you will have a different goal and a different ambition for the work of the Health and Wellbeing Board as we go forward. And I want to prioritise the work programme. I want to populate it with things that are actually going to improve each and every constituent's life, and I want to give particular consideration to that. One of the things I'm going to point out, and it's been absent for quite a while, is that it's a long time since we brought a public health outcome framework before you. A long time since we brought you all the data of all of the 100+ indices around smoking, around obesity, around life expectancy before you. But I promise you we will bring that back in September with the director's support. With the director's support.
Maybe a little bit later than September, because of the
close to September. We'll go in the winter. In the winter. Yeah, yes. And the reason I say that, is for the first time in living memory, the healthy life expectancy of women in Nottinghamshire dropped below 60 for the first time in history. So women are getting ill in the late 50s and then spending the rest of their lives with ill health. You compare that to 74, 75 for the average Japanese woman. There's a huge element there. Now, I throw that out there to say it's a statistic. How much of that statistic is a reflection of socioeconomics, health inequalities? Some people argue that it's a reflection of the increase recording of mental health problems, and we all know the expansion of mental health problems that has occurred in depression and autism and ADHD, etc. And we're factoring in more now problems that probably did not lend a weight to previous figures, and I'll come back to Vivian in a few minutes when I get through that. So I highlight these things at the beginning of the meeting, because the meeting only allows us to deal with certain specific things. But that's where my thinking is at, that's where my ambitions are, and that's where I'm hoping that we go together as a Health and Wellbeing Board to address those issues. Before I move on to the formal agenda, Vivian, did you want to say something on that?
From me, please, Chair. Thank you. So thank you for that, and really great to hear the ambition for the Health and Wellbeing Board over next year. Just to build on some of your points, like Councillor Doddy, so you're absolutely right in terms of identifying healthy life expectancy and reducing as an area of further wanting to do additional work on, which is why we did the DPH annual report on women's health that you would be aware around a year ago. What we can make sure is when we bring that further update on the public health outcomes framework, that we also bring a bit of an update in terms of what the actions were on that and how we're progressing on some of those recommendations. So we can provide a little bit more update on that. And then in terms of the work plan conversation, really supportive of what you were saying there, and really keen to think around where there are agendas or topics or particular policy areas that colleagues around the table would like additional support from the Health and Wellbeing Board. If there's areas that need unblocking, or if there's areas that we can collectively add more value, we'd be really keen for colleagues to put stuff on the Health and Wellbeing Board agenda. It is our board. It is not just one person's. So please do come forward with those agenda items.
Thank you, Vivian. Excellent. So the Health and Wellbeing Board, we're going to start off with item number 1, the appointment of Councillor Dr. John Doddy as the chairman of Nottinghamshire Health and Wellbeing Board from the 14th of May 2026. So this is a to note thing only, not one to comment on or even to vote on. Just to note. Shall we note that, James? Excellent. Now, we were going to have an opportunity to elect a vice chair, traditionally somebody not directly connected with the political side of things, normally an external individual who can contribute, particularly in the changing landscape of neighbourhood health plans, expanding East Midlands Combined Counties Authority, changing ICBs to include Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire and Lincolnshire. The roadmap that we are actually on at the moment is an incredibly fast changing one, and therefore the Vice Chair should be somebody that brings a knowledge of that to the position of Vice Chair. We've had a number of people express interest. Unfortunately, none of them could actually be here today. And what we're going to do, James, would you like to explain what we're going to do?
Thank you, Chair. So it is proposed that in light of the people that were interested in being chair not being able to attend today's meeting, but also to give other members an opportunity to put themselves forward, which suggests that it would be beneficial to postpone this item and have the election of a vice chair in September, which allows time for people to submit their nominations, give reasons, and then we put it to a vote at the September meeting.
All those in favour of that proposal? I think we can say that that's been accepted, James. I have a note, agenda item number 3, to note the following membership of Nottinghamshire Health and Wellbeing Board. So I'm not going to read them all out, but you can see how diverse all of the various elements are, from the ICB to place-based partnerships to police and crime to fire and rescue, etc., etc. That's the whole point of health and wellbeing, that it involves a statutory number of people that have to be here in order to make this a representative board. We're always open to the fact that this can change, we can co-opt people onto it, etc., and it can grow to meet the needs of the health and wellbeing of the people of Nottinghamshire. But for now, this is what it is. I'm going to just stop there. Vivian, would you like to say anything about the membership?
No, I think just building on your point, I think we're really grateful for members' contributions in the meeting today. I think what I would be keen to think around is, as there is so much change going on in the system, and we'll be having a lot of discussions around neighbourhood working moving forward. So really keen to think around, as our system evolves and changes, we know that the health and wellbeing boards are one of the things that are going to remain. So I think there's something just to think around in terms of how we may need to flex our membership to make sure that we're getting the best outcomes that we can in terms of improving health and reducing health inequalities for Nottinghamshire. So if there are any other members that we think there are particular gaps, we're very happy to again have those recommendations and sent forward to us, and then we can consider how we might want to put those forward. But please do know that this is something that we can keep looking at, and I'm really conscious that we don't say that this is a static thing, because we know that there's lots of change there.
And East Midlands Combined Counties Authority is only going to grow and have more influence over the, what I would call the building blocks of good health, more over the transport, more over employment, more over roads, more over housing. So it's going to be enormously game changing as the years go on. That's the flexibility that we're talking about. So I'm going to move on from that to item number 5, which is apologies for absence. And I have one apology from Kelvin Wright.
I've got apologies. Sorry, go ahead, James. Thank you, Chairman. We've also received apologies from Matt Russell, who has been substituted by Andy Councillor today. Apologies from Derek Hickton, Natalie Baker-Napier, Guy van der Schell, who's been substituted by Katie Ball today. Apologies from Anne Coyle, and we have apologies from Damien West and a substitute today.
Tom Archer.
Tom Archer. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to. Sorry, guys.
Can we just record Tom Diamond from the Integrated Care Board send his apologies as well, please? Thank you.
And also,
Angie Jackson, there's me instead.
yeah. And
can I also give apologies in Teresa Hodgkinson, who's on holiday. Thank you, John.
And also Dr. Dylan Bartholomew's.
And Dylan, who's busy today. I'm going to put the minutes of the last meeting forward for approval. The last meeting was on the 11th of March 2026. And I'm just going to go through the minutes for noting and for correction of practical errors rather than comments on the contents. So I'm going to go through page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, 6, 7, and page 8. I'm going to say, have we got any challenges to any of the content that's therein, or noted absence or content? All in favour? It's approved, James. And the next item is declarations of interest. If anybody here present feels that they have a pecuniary or a non-pecuniary interest in any of the items that may come up either now or later on the agenda, please declare it now, or if it comes to your attention later on, just declare it when it comes to your attention and you think it will be relevant. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest in any item that's on the agenda? Yes, record that as no. Now we're going to get on to the main items, and the next 4 items will be the Health and Wellbeing Delivery Strategy, Ambition 1, then followed by Integrated Neighbourhood Services Progress, followed by the Better Care Fund, followed by the Work Programme. We'll aim to finish around 3-ish, and then we'll have some coffee and some biscuits, and then we'll have the workshop. Are we in here around the assembly? Oh, beautiful. So we're in the assembly room afterwards. Fantastic. So item number 7, I've got the joint health and wellbeing strategy delivery ambition number 1, which we will all remember 4 ambitions is giving every child the best start in life. Who's going to speak to this? Alina, over to you.
Hello. So I'll be providing just an update in terms of the key developments on ambition from the annual delivery plan that has been produced in 25-26. So it does not include all actions enabling strategy delivery. Data related to ambition 1 was identified as containing errors, and consequently, because of that, it's not being included in this report. This is to ensure only validated and accurate information is presented to this board. As a result, a full deep dive analysis will not be available at this meeting, and it's limited to key highlights. However, work is underway, and review and validated data set. We are looking to deliver that deep dive ambition 1 during the September board alongside ambition 3. The Health and Wellbeing Board will continue to receive quarterly collation of 4 highlight reports on each ambition to provide an update on progress of key achievements, as well as highlight any key risks, issues, and mitigating steps being undertaken. I'll just move on to also the P&A findings, which is the pharmaceutical needs assessment. That was published in February 2025, and the highlights that involved around the community policy in delivering preventative care, reducing health inequalities, and supporting integration with primary care networks. It concluded that there was no identified gaps in the current provision, nor within the projected 3-year period for pharmaceutical services across Nottinghamshire. However, it did recognise that there were significant opportunities to further develop across Nottinghamshire. It recognised also that there was opportunities to further develop optimised pharmacy services in line with the NHS 10-year plan and change NHS agenda. These opportunities are centred around strengthening prevention, improving NHS agenda, as well as improving management of long-term conditions, and enhancing access to primary care, supporting medicines optimisation, and reducing health inequalities, and advancing integrated care delivery. Thank you. I will now pass you over to Helena to deliver the ambition on key updates.
Thank you very much. Lots of slides, I think. But hi everybody, I'm Helena Cripps. I'm a Senior Public Health and Communities Manager. Pom has joined me on screen. I don't know if Pom can hear me or if you're struggling, but Pom, did you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Helena. I can just about hear what's being said. Hi, colleagues, Pom Bogle. So I head Young People Services on behalf of the County Council, and I'm just temporarily filling in for my colleague Irene Kukulis, who heads Early Years and Family Hubs, just while she's going through a period of recovery. So thank you for having me, and apologies I couldn't be there in person with you.
Fantastic, thank you. So yeah, as everybody said, we're here to provide a short update on Ambition 1 of the Health and Wellbeing Strategy, which is Best Start. As you know, it's a priority because giving children a good start in life improves lifelong health and wellbeing and helps us to tackle inequalities. And that's because the early years have such a lasting impact on development and help children to grow up healthier and hopefully happier and more confident. And as Davina said, this presentation is focusing just on key developments and policy changes rather than a sort of a traditional deep dive. So next slide, please. The Best Start strategy, which you might remember you endorsed as a Health and Wellbeing Board last year, focuses on early pregnancy to age 5, but it's got a particular focus on the critical 1001 days between conception and a child's second birthday. It's very much framed within a building blocks of health approach, so very much recognising that it's the circumstances that we're all born into that help shape our future and influence our lifelong health and wellbeing. It has a clear vision, which you can see on this slide, and 5 key priority areas, and really it's celebrating and hopefully maximising the role that we can play, lots of different people and services and partners and communities can play in building the right kind of environments where children can thrive. Next slide, please, Nina. So there's also a national Best Start in Life strategy that was published last summer. And that's also all about supporting children to thrive and working to try and make sure that a child's background doesn't sort of determine how they will go on to do in life. The key vehicle for that national strategy is providing better support for families through the development of Best Start Family Hub services, but also by developing multi-agency, real partnership, Best Start local plans, as well as through high quality early years education. It's supported as a new national strategy and a national initiative with a Best Start in Life delivery grant, which is a delivery grant over 3 years. And as you can imagine, that comes with some specific requirements that we need to deliver and to meet. But the strategy as a whole places a really strong emphasis on school readiness. Now, in this context, school readiness is purely the measure of child development that takes place at age 5 in school, so led by schools. And nationally, the government wants to improve the proportion of children who achieve a good level of development at age 5. And with that, we've been set specific targets for Nottinghamshire, and we're asked to achieve those by 2028. Put those targets on screen, but essentially the ask is that 76.7% of our children achieve that good level of development at age 5 by 2028. In the latest year, we were at 67.5, so quite a way to go. And what that means in terms of numbers and actual children is it's an extra 757 children across the county who need to be school ready by 2028 compared to last year. There's also a target for disadvantaged children. Now, the measure for that is children who are eligible for free school meals, and the target there is to increase from 46.8% in the latest year up to 56.6% by 2028. And again, in terms of numbers of children, that means an extra 117 of our most disadvantaged children. Now, it's important to flag that the gap between disadvantaged children and their peers is worse in Nottinghamshire than it is in other parts of England. Therefore, what we call closing that gap or narrowing that gap is a really key priority for us locally. And as you can imagine, that very much needs a multi-agency system response in order to do that. Next slide, please. So what have we done so far? we've developed and published our Best Start in Life local plan. So this plan builds on our local Best Start strategy that we developed last year. It incorporates the asks of this national Best Start in Life work and this national strategy, and it brings together all of our multi-agency transformation actions from conception to 5 that will help more children rise, be confident, and hopefully achieve that good level of development at age 5. So that means that we've now got a really clear and really streamlined plan with all of our actions in one place across the partners, and we have included a link to that in the slides. It's very much been shaped by lots of partners and by multi-agency colleagues. It's owned in terms of governance by the Best Start Strategic Partnership, and then obviously we will report regularly to yourselves as a board. At the moment, we're working to try and create a more detailed costed delivery plan for that delivery grant that I mentioned, and that is predominantly about strengthening our local family hub services so they become Best Start family hub services, and also and their role in terms of helping us to deliver our local plan. We're also quite keen to take the opportunity to share our Best Start offer, which has been newly extended to age 5. So previously it covered the period of life from conception to 2, and it provides a really clear guide for parents and carers to the local services and the support that's in place across Nottinghamshire from conception to age 5 across our partners, so across health and wellbeing partners. With that, there's also 2 accompanying resources that provide advice, guidance and top tips for parents and carers. And one of those is your child's focused on your child's first 2 years, and one of those is focused on your child's journey to school. And all 3 of those resources have very much been developed in partnership with experts and with input from parents. And the idea is that most parents will receive these resources digitally, but we have got hard copy versions for those who would struggle to access in that way. And I've brought some examples with us today so that you can see what that looks like. And we very much welcome your support in promoting across your networks. What we're hoping is that extension from age 2 to age 5 makes it a much broader resource that will be much easier to promote widely across lots of different partners, and that's very much the next phase of our comms work over the next couple of months. And you can also find a bit more information on the links on those slides. So that brings me to recommendations. We would like to recommend that the Health and Wellbeing Board recognises the work that's happened to bring together a clear set of actions in a Best Start in Life local plan, and that's very much our multi-agency pregnancy to 5 activity and actions. And we would like to come back with a fuller update on the progress of Ambition 1 in September, and along with that we'd like to bring some detail in terms of how we're planning to spend and use that delivery grants, and we would welcome your input into that conversation. And then we'd very much welcome your support to help us promote this Best Start offer to families and to people and professionals and services and organisations working with under 5s. And finally, we would like you to consider how you could support the ongoing delivery of the Best Start local plan. Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much to Helena and Helena for the presentation on giving every child the best start in life, which, as you rightly say, is a core part of the 2026-2029 overall plan offered by myself last year. I'm going to start off by just looking at a couple of things. Family hubs never been more important, particularly against the backdrop of ambitions for 56% of deprived children to be ready for school at 5 years of age. It seems like a shocking indictment of the state of children at the present moment when your ambition is 50%. I know that you talk about deprived areas, but overall Nottinghamshire is on a par with the rest of the country. If you look at it as a total county, if you want to break it down into Mansfield, Ashfield, Bassetlaw, and look at the more deprived areas of it, certainly we have huge variation from Rushcliffe to Ashfield, but overall it's normal, and therefore I would expect the overall figure to be normal, not skewed to be one of the worst figures in the country. So you've got to say, what are we doing that's allowed us to get into the position that this is the case, because the overall figure should still be the overall figure. But it does give us room for improvement. I don't think there's any doubt about that, Alina. I think that that's important in terms of where we're going and support that. I'm going to Amina, come back to the joint pharmaceutical needs assessment. It is a 2025 pharmaceutical needs assessment, and the reality is that nobody was talking about neighbourhood plans and integrated neighbourhood plans. Nobody was talking about a 10-year health vision by West Streeting in 2025 because it wasn't even published. And therefore, although this may seem like the joint pharmaceutical needs assessment meets the needs of that then time, it certainly doesn't meet the needs of the current time. And in particular, it doesn't actually, as you said, look to future gaps. And against the background of falling healthy life expectancy, pharmacy will have a big role to play. So I think that if we're bringing this paper back in September, we need to bring back a full independent joint pharmaceutical needs assessment update, bearing in mind the changing areas that we've got. Opportunities are the key. One of the problems with chemists and pharmacists, and everybody says, oh, there's boots, there's this, there's that. It's that the people don't know what they actually deliver. The people don't know what services they are. The services change. They'll do these 9 conditions if you've got a runny nose or you've got an ear infection, but they still default to the GP to get their care because they don't know. So our opportunities are really to actually tell people if pharmacy is going to be a core part of the community services that are at the linchpin of the integrated neighbourhood plans and services that we're going to spend the afternoon talking about, then we need to do the justice of giving it its own birth and say, what are we doing looking forward for the opportunities? And you did mention opportunities, Tamina, and mentioning them and actually developing them are 2 different things. We need public understanding of what we're trying to achieve, public engagement. They need to understand the services, and most importantly, if you've got such a deprived community, there are a lot of people out there who struggle from a translation point of view, who may not have equal access. There's all the people with health inequalities. So a service without gaps is not necessarily a service that delivers for all health inequalities, etc. So I would like to see this come back to Mina in September with a full item on the opportunities fed into our goal of healthy, integrated neighbourhood teams. With that, I'm going to pass over to Vivian.
Chair, just can I?
Oh, sorry.
Had my hand up for a while.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Well, yes, it was hidden behind Vivian's hand. Yeah. That's all I could say. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Sarah Colin. I'm the chair of Ashfield in Nottinghamshire. We were part of the PNC, which was that one. We were part of that, but I just wanted to agree and echo what you just said. Actually, we raised that issue around equalities and being able to ensure that the gaps were filled. It's quite a prescriptive process, so it was very, in terms of what we could look at and what we were pulling into that report. Yes, it shows that we've got what we say we have. Yes. However, Healthwatch did, we have talked about the fact that there were many gaps that we could see that weren't being filled, and I absolutely agree with you that as we move into more neighbourhood emphasis, pharmacies become even more important. The fact that they're now able to support and prescribe against a number of conditions. It's a place where many people, particularly those who maybe don't have access to transport, are looking for a quicker, effective support for any of their healthcare needs for themselves and their families. I think we do really need to look at it in a much more broader sense and from an independent point of view. So I just wanted to echo what you said.
That people don't think twice about attending the pharmacy as they would do the GP or anywhere else, and that's getting out to them so they understand the offer. And if we're making it a core part of our integrated neighbourhood health policies and plans and services and offers, then we have to really go out there and make sure that we do what we need to do to make that the point. Vivian.
Thank you, Chair. And very supportive about the points that are being raised around the pharmaceutical reassessment and the opportunity that we have as pharmacy moving forward. Acknowledging that pharmacy commissioning is through an ICB lens, so I'm looking over towards Alex and Claire here in terms of some of that. But I think one of the opportunities that we can continue to discuss later on is absolutely the opportunities around how we develop that integrated neighbourhood health plan. And I think there will be further opportunities around that. Certainly we can have some conversations offline in terms of if it would be helpful to do an update, whether that's an update around what services are available or how we might want to cover just making sure that colleagues are aware of the vast range and the emerging role of pharmacy within the board. So we can certainly pick that one up. The other thing that I just wanted to sort of come back to though is almost, first of all, thank you to Tamina and Helena for the really helpful update today. But I think what Helena has identified and shown today is there's much more additional resource in the Best Start area. We're getting national funding in a way that we haven't done previously. This also links into other agendas around family first partnerships, around send reform, and you will hear more around that when we come back and do that deep dive in September. But I think what we are talking about is some really challenging targets, and I think you really highlighted really well the challenges that we have from a health inequalities point of view in Nottinghamshire. So we know that overall our outcomes are sort of middle of the pack, but we know that within Nottinghamshire that our inequalities are sometimes slightly bigger than you would see in a normal county, and that's because of the demographics of our population and the really affluence and the real deprivation that we see. So I suppose what I just wanted to do was be really grateful around the Best Start plan. For those that haven't seen it, there's some really good tangible actions in there that are being put forward. I really would ask colleagues to think around how can they lean in and help around this agenda. We know that particularly 2001 days of the first 1001 days of life are absolutely critical in terms of thinking around how we have thriving children, but also how they become strong and resilient adults in the future. And we know that there's also a really strong link around the building blocks of health and wellbeing, which will impact on all of us in lots and lots of different ways. So whether that's thinking about our housing responsibility, whether that's thinking around having good work and good employment opportunities, whether it's around access to health and care services, I would just really ask colleagues to think around how are they taking the work that we're doing and really thinking around particularly those 0 to 5s and really thinking around how they can support help us reach that development targets, which are challenging, and we need to acknowledge that. But thank you.
Thank you. Alex Bond.
Thanks, Chair. So just to pick up the point on pharmacy, I've worked for 20 years in and around community pharmacy, so it's really exciting to hear the energy and enthusiasm in this space. I'll defer to Viv around the kind of usefulness of doing a full refresh of the pharmaceutical needs assessment. That to me feels quite a kind of big piece of work that's quite kind of sort of statutorily kind of governed. But the point around let's describe all the benefits and the possibilities and the ambition that we have around community pharmacy, that would feel incredibly useful. People talk about neighbourhood health centres. The reality is we've got neighbourhood health centres on every high street where there's a community pharmacy. So we need to make the most of that, not least because from this September, all pharmacists will have independent prescribing qualifications. So that list of conditions that you described, Councillor Doddy, becomes effectively infinite, certainly in terms of the kind of clinical kind of prescribing abilities. So yeah, let's lean into work that's really helpful rather than necessarily a kind of perhaps a narrow focus on looking at the P&A. Let's describe what the benefits and the opportunities are in pharmacy.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you. Sorry, Andrew Birch representing Bassetlaw, and regards to previous apologies, Dr. Kumar sent apologies and will be accompanying me in the future. We meet every Wednesday and share with the CDs of each PCM papers and feed into this, so thank you. My question regarding the targets, whilst appreciating they're guided by what's both feasible and outlined in national policies, can we have a more ambitious, or can we have a bigger ambition, which I hope is a rhetorical question, rather than just a target of 56.6 for those most deprived children? it seems like if we work to that target, we're reinforcing that inequity in that group. So I'd love to see a collective, bigger ambition to level up to the 26%.
A grand ambition indeed to bring the lowest up to the norm. I think that is very admirable. Andrea, did somebody else have their hand up down there?
Sorry, there's a PS to that before I hand over to Sarah. With my voluntary sector hat on, we are working with those families, and that's a really low number across the county. So if we can crack the data sharing, I'm sure we can contribute even more effectively in the context of integrated neighbourhood team development, which is only strengthening those relationships. We help the families and those families on the ground. So thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Just to addition to Alex's point, great to hear that there'll be more emphasis, because the health watch did do a report during the time we were doing the pharmacy. I'll go back to that, but our own independent research showed that only 40% of people understood there was a pharmacy first service in the county. And that number is woefully low, and you know now it's going to be much more around prescribers and the energy that's going into getting everybody qualified. We need to make sure as many people as possible use it. So from a partnership approach, it's all about business, trying to let people know what services are out there. And I absolutely agree with Andrea on the issue of targets. You know, I think we can be more ambitious, and we should be more ambitious for what we see are some of the, you know, we shouldn't be looking as low as we are. I really feel
Yes, the concept of 1 and 2 children being school ready at 5 does seem to be somewhat low, Helena. We're raising the bar for you to bring it up to the same standard as undeprived children. Helena? Helen.
just to add on another item around pharmacy, so the integrated neighbourhood team specifications are just being developed now and drafted, and pharmacy will absolutely be part of that specification, so we can make sure we can
Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Helen. I think what we were talking about, and Alex was sort of alluding to as well, is understanding by the public and engagement. You can have the best service in the world, but if nobody knows about it, nobody engages in it, it doesn't take any of the burden from general practice or any of the other services that we're trying to actually develop into this. So, yeah, I think the key was understanding and engagement. I've got Councillor Wilmott. Sorry, Helena, did you want to reply to that? Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Very good information that's been relayed. One of the first things that I'm going to say is that I would like to know each and every time we have a meeting that the figures of the families you've actually helped. It would be nice to know what work is being done with the families, because all this is figures. Yes, I just wanted to. Now, in the report, you're highlighting the evolving role of community pharmacies in delivering preventative care and reducing health inequalities and supporting integration with the primary care networks. And the report also recognises significant opportunities to further develop and optimise pharmacy services in line with the NHS 10-year health plan and the change in NHS agenda. Now, these opportunities centre on strengthening prevention, improving management of long-term conditions, enhancing access to primary care supporting with medicine optimisation and reducing health inequalities and advancing integrated care. Now, most of these things have been delivered via the enhanced pharmaceutical services. In fact, community pharmacy seems to be the key partner. But my question is, how long ago, not long ago, many of the pharmacies used to say that we're not qualified to deliver many of these services. So has all the pharmacies now been updated, and have they had the necessary information given to them so that they can talk about relaying different things to the general public. As I say, I know a pharmacist who says that it's going to be difficult to start with because he's got so many prescriptions to deal with, and to suddenly stop doing the prescriptions, the 20 prescriptions he'd got, and going and talking for 10 minutes to somebody else will enhance his problems for him in this sector. I just wondered how are you going to sort that problem out for the pharmacists. Question 2 is the best start in life. The government are aiming for 75% children across England to be school ready, defined as achieving a good level of achievement at the end of reception of 28. It is a very ambitious target. I just wondered what's going to happen to the other 25%. How are you going to deal with that issue? Because they will be the most important people that you need to sort out. Can I also ask you? It says you're seeking to strengthen local best start family hubs. Now, that sounds fantastic for those that get involved in it. But what are you going to do about the families who won't get involved and to help them? Because that's a situation that needs to be addressed. How are you going to cope with that? Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much. So the easiest question to answer is the one about the figures. When are you going to bring us the figures? And I'm reliably told by the Director of Public Health that we will bring you figures in September for those people that we feel have been improved through the interventions that we've done. I too have stood in a pharmacy waiting for a prescription, and the pharmacist is in doing a blood pressure or doing a medication review. All people are building up in the chemist because the prescriptions haven't been done because the pharmacist isn't available, and these are genuine practical problems which will have to be overseen by somebody in order to make it actually work. So absolutely crystal clear on that. Helena Cripps.
Thank you very much. May I just respond to a couple of the points that have been raised about Best Start work? Thank you. So just to provide some assurance that we absolutely have aspirations to close that gap further. That gap between our most disadvantaged and the rest of the county is not where we want it to be. And we have set out in our local plan that we would love, and our ambition is to go further. I think perhaps we need to think about how quickly we might be able to get there, and whether that is by 2028 or whether that follows. But absolutely a really important priority for us locally. There was also some talk about reaching into our communities and how we're really going to identify and engage the most vulnerable. So one of the things that we will be working on is the development of, for want of a better word, an outreach strategy. So really looking at how we can reach in and engage some of our most vulnerable communities. And alongside that, we have some work planned on how we identify individual families and children who we fear are most at risk of not being school ready as early as possible. And at age 2, there's some really good opportunities for us to do that there. So that is part of our plan. Also, if I may, in terms of activity and data, so very much with the new funding that we have, that absolutely is an expectation that we spend some of that on evidence-based interventions, and those evidence-based interventions will come with outcome measures, so we will be able to track children's progress from the start of the intervention to the end of the intervention. And then if I may, there's been lots of conversation about how important it is to be aware of the services and support that are out there in relation to community pharmacy. And I think I just would like to say that that's the same in relation to our services for children and families and under 5s. And that is quite a simple action that I think lots of partners could support us to. And our Best Start offer is potentially the start of that. So I would really welcome, I'll leave these here and people can pick them up as they leave, but we would very much welcome support that promotes that offer.
Thank you, Helena and Tamina. I think we could spend a whole afternoon on giving every child the best start in life, and that Councillor without even going anywhere near the pharmacies. So, I think there's a lot there, and we'll be coming back to it again in September. I'm going to take one further question, if any. Did you, Councillor Pulk, have your hand up at one stage?
Is this working? Yeah. You more or less answered the question. I was interested in the literature, the actual physical literature, because quite often disadvantaged people have less access to social media and electronic means. And I was wondering if that could be distributed in perhaps pharmacies, obviously, clinics and things of that nature. I think it's a very important tool in terms of doing it. I'll just add one thing, which is a totally tangential thing, if I may, Chair. I went into the opticians to pick some new glasses up the other day in Bassetlaw, and I'd been cutting a hedge and I'd injured my eye. And whilst I was there, I just said, I know it's not your responsibility, but I think I was wrong with my eye. And they booked me into an appointment in the afternoon, spent over half an hour examining it and did some work and cleaned it out. And they informed me that the services there, if you had an eye injury, it is referred, this was Specsavers, they actually do that on behalf of the NHS in Bassetlaw. So it's not just about pharmacists doing work, it's about a holistic approach to medical care. And I think the difficulty is people have been brought up, my generation, that if you have an issue, you go to the doctor. And now, instead of going to the doctor, it's too busy to go to A&E. And I think we need to promote across the piece the fact that other agencies, including opticians, which was surprising to me, do take on work that we would have traditionally thought were done by local GPs. So I'd share that with you.
Absolutely harnessing all of the public services that are out there that people can use. That's the whole ethos of the integrated neighbourhood plan. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And of course, opticians follow people up with glaucoma and monitor multiple conditions within the communities and diabetic retinopathy, etc. And I've done for many, many years. But as you said, that if people don't understand and they don't engage, you could have easily gone to the eye casualty, but you didn't. And you've highlighted exactly what we want to do here. And the other thing is that you're saying that in order to have a proper system, you have to have equitable access. And that's really what you're pointing with there. I'm going to take one further question and then we'll move on. Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. So, Health Screening Committee several years ago had a sub-working group which did peace and school readiness, which Councillor already chaired, and there was a lot of piece of work on board to make sure that's all been was with part of the prep work as well. Yeah, but then Irene put a lot of information to the table as well from John's team. So as long as that's all, because again, there was a lot of work we could go on from there and a lot of actions. So as long as that's all been worked together.
It has any actions that haven't been completed have been rolled into that local plan. But yeah, that was a brilliant piece of work. Thank you.
Bearing in mind that we've had a full discussion to date and with the amount of things that are on the agenda and workshop, I'm going to move the recommendations on page 13, 1 to 4, as read out by Helena. All those in favour? James, after your move. So, fantastic. Thanks again, Helena and Tamina. So, I'm now moving on to words that I feel are tattooed into my brain, which are neighbourhoods and integrated plans. If there's anybody who hasn't heard of an integrated neighbourhood plan, raise your hands. No, fantastic. We're all aware of the government's 10-year plan. We're all aware of the three core tenets of that. We're all aware of movement from hospital to the community. It's the cheapest and best place to be. We're all aware of analog to digital, the possibility of a single shareable record across platforms. And we're all aware of the great goal of prevention rather than the treatment of diseases. The progress that we're making with regards to creating an integrated service which takes care of people in the communities, but at the same stage actually provides a preventative environment for them to grow and thrive. As somebody said, the goal is for people to lead gloriously ordinary lives. I'm going to pass this over. Who's going to read? Tom, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the second paper we've had on the Neighbourhood Health Plan. We've been waiting a little while for the guidance to come out. It's been national guidance, so the framework guidance came out in the spring. and now we've got this period until March 2027 to write the plan. And as we've been touching on various questions and comments earlier, Neighbourhood Health Plan is going to be where we try and bring a lot of work together. So we're now calling the Neighbourhood Health Plan, the Integrated Neighbourhood Health Plan, the Neighbourhood Health Plan. That's just to bring it in line with the national guidance. I've said this before, but this is just worth knowing that the Neighbourhood Health and Wellbeing Board is our central point of governance for neighbourhood health. And that's one of the reasons we've been focusing on it so strongly this year. And within Nottinghamshire, we talk about integrated neighbourhood public service. So we're talking about neighbourhood health, optometry, pharmacy, but we know there's a real desire, and we've seen it through our workshops, to broaden it out. So how are adult social care, children's social care, libraries, police, fire, how are we all wrapping around our communities? So that's a little area where we differ, because we are engaging with other health and wellbeing boards in the Derbyshire and Lincolnshire network. The Neighbourhood Health Service is part of that free shift to the NHS. How we're going to do that at a local level. As I say, the guidance has been released, and in Appendix 1 it shows a really high level plan on the page. So that's really just the top areas that we need to cover. So there's reform agendas, there's some areas we need to work on. Now, at first read, it can seem quite NHS focused. However, actually to deliver that, it's much more broader than NHS. So when we read the guidance, we're seeing a more holistic approach that we've been talking about previously. The authoring has begun. So we've got colleagues from the Integrated Care Board, we've got colleagues from place-based partnerships, we've got colleagues from adult social care, children's social care, and we come together at the Joint Health and Wellbeing Steering Group. And we've just started writing the plan, so I think we've probably done about a sixth of it, just sort of setting out all of our ambitions and learning from our workshops. And we are then aligning it. We've heard about family hubs and Best Start. So there's a list of lots of strategies this will link to. And the way I see this is that this Neighbourhood Health Plan will start to become our single point of focus as a health and wellbeing system. As far as timeframes go, we've been waiting for this a little while. So this is our development year. This is when we can really start to pull apart ideas, understand the guidance and the framework. We can, one of the activities later is around understanding what neighbourhood footprints are, which has, spoiler alert, is actually quite difficult, and we're grappling with it in Nottinghamshire. Everyone is in the same position. I think we're probably about 6 months ahead of our neighbours on how we're developing that. We've also got to understand the governance. So that's it's one of the recommendations about we need to do a bit more work to understand the governance of the Neighbourhood Health Plan, because some of it is very NHS focused, other is very partnership focused. So we just need to work that out over the next year. Our hand-in date is going to be February 2027 to the Health and Wellbeing Board. So we've got now, and we'll have a slide later on how we're going to deliver that and what our timeframes are. As we've seen through the various workshops, that there's a real strong commitment from board members to do more of that wraparound services, to put people at the centre of care, and also bringing those building blocks of health. So again, that's where we differ slightly from other areas, that we are doing more, we're thinking more holistically, we're thinking about the conditions that people are born and live and grow in. The recommendations are, it's just a note of progress. So we are in tangible space now. There will be a final plan in 2027. And the other recommendation is how we consider that oversight and assurance of the delivery of the plan, which is, so when we have that plan, how are we holding ourselves to account for that delivery?
Thanks very much indeed, Thomas. I suppose when I think of it, I think back to 2019 when they introduced the primary care networks. So if you look at Nottingham West, then you might have had 14 disparate practices never talking to each other. And then the government created a primary care network in 2019, which is now 6 or 7 years old, and it's just a normal functioning single unit full of creativity, sharing resources and identifying challenges that exist within it. So I see the neighbourhood plans very much in the same way, that we're creating a network which traditionally hasn't been a network that's actually worked together, but will actually, through the creation of that network, the creation of shared goals, the creation of shared finances, etc., become a primary care network, one that involves all of the opticians, the pharmacies, the local government, social care, etc. So I see it just as an expansion of something we've already done. We've been exceptionally successful at it, better than anything I've ever seen before. So I can see it in how it's going to work. But it's creating the plan, putting it into action, adequately funding it, and then I think it will work really, really well. But everybody's got their own view on that. That just happens to be my view. Alex.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Tom. Just to say on behalf of my colleague Tom Diamond from the Integrated Care Board, who's been working really closely with Tom. Firstly, colleagues other than those called Tom are not allowed to be involved in the production of this plan. But just to say, I fully endorse what you said there, Tom. This has been a really positive and strikingly kind of collaborative approach to get us to where we are today. I'd also just note, 'cause I'm not sure it's perhaps even pulled out in the report, we should note that the NHS Modernisation Bill, which is currently in its legislative process, changes the kind of primary kind of strategy that this board is responsible for from the Joint Health and Wellbeing Strategy to a Neighbourhood Health Plan. So if colleagues have kind of got in their mind the importance of the Joint Health and Wellbeing Strategy, you need to start thinking about swapping the importance that you place on that onto the neighbourhood health plans. It really is central, absolutely, for the work of this board and also for the delivery of neighbourhood health in our patch. So yeah, it is a really joint thing. It's everyone's plan around this board table, and we're really keen to make sure that's the case. And then I'll just, I guess, agree with Councillor Doddy's point there around we can build on what we've got. But I think we need to go even further than that, John. And we've got to make sure we've got housing and employment and transport and access to green spaces, all those kind of things in this plan as well. And that's why if we look around the kind of membership that we've got, colleagues from MCA, kind of much wider colleagues than perhaps some other boards, I think gives us a really good opportunity to really land that.
And could be the most exciting thing that's happened to the provision of service since 1948, Alex.
Never short of ambition, John. Yeah.
I'm going to go down to Caroline. Go ahead, Caroline.
Hi, I was just interested in the improved digital access. I have got the NHS app, but on when they rejigged it, I've now lost all my GP notes. So, for instance, whilst I was on holiday, I had a text message to say, please can you contact the GP? They've had some information from a consultant and they would like to speak to you. So I phoned and said, and then they told me that doctors were on strike, so there was no appointments necessary. And I said, well, it's not really an appointment I need. A telephone conversation will be good. I've suffered for this for the last 10 years. I'm quite keen on what my health needs are. I said, if I could have seen the letter from the hospital, I could have then commented clearly, because I didn't actually think I needed the letter, if you see what I mean. So what I'm saying is that the digital access seems to have gone back in the last 6 months than gone forward. And I don't know whose responsibility that is for people like me that do use the app in a meaningful way. So that's
I'm going to throw that open to anybody who feels that they could answer that question. Alex, well,
so thanks for raising that, Councillor Ellis. I'm not going to attempt to kind of answer it now, but I'm really happy for you to take my contact details and send me for a little bit more information. I can ask the detail.
The receptionist said I wasn't the only one that had said because of the lack of notes now.
Feels like listening room to have a look at. Yeah, let's have a chat and we'll see what we can get to the bottom of on that.
Thank you. Vivian Robbins.
Thank you, Chair, and just wanted to endorse some of the comments that we've talked about here. I think, as Alex has mentioned, that there's sort of evolving guidance around what the relationship between the neighbourhood health plan and the joint health and wellbeing strategy, and I think it's getting more and more clearer around the fact that it was going to be an addendum, but I think it now is likely that it is going to become our new joint health and wellbeing strategy. And actually, when we think about the timeline that we've got, actually our strategy runs to the end of the year anyway, so that will come into a nice alignment. But what I wouldn't want to do is underestimate the opportunity that we've got here to work differently. And like you say, build on the ambition that we've got locally around going above and beyond what some of the national guidance has said. And I think I won't go into it too much detail now because we've got the workshop later, but I think it'd be really good to think around. Lucy Peel's coming to do a bit of an introduction around some of the work around integrated neighbourhood service and how that links into the neighbourhood health plan, acknowledging that's one bit of a really important puzzle around how we collectively work differently across the public sector and voluntary sector moving forward. So yeah, just wanted to provide a bit of clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Go ahead.
Thank you for that. I think to answer Councillor Ellis's point, I can't tell you how that's going to happen, but one of the things that I know at Health Watch in Nottinghamshire, we're very concerned about the shift to digital, in that the access of anybody in our county and our country generally, we know there are massive inequalities in digital access, let alone issues with the app. There are many different ways in which people are trying to support patients to get the app. I know the voluntary sector is doing a lot of work in that. So that's something that as a partnership, again, approach, but taking from your point and this opportunity that we've got, I think it is really important when we raise the issue of this is this board strategy, this is how we take it forward, that we are trying to be more ambitious in terms of the integration across the system rather than just a health strategy. This is something that we're bringing in the entire health and care system, including the voluntary and community sector, social enterprise sector. It means something, I think, if we can find a way that we all feel engaged in this. It's always a difficult thing, I think, this board that we think, obviously we've gone from 12 to 4 to 6 sessions, but you know, at such a high level meeting which this is, it does feel difficult sometimes to understand where your bit in this puzzle fits and how that meets in. So for me, there's something really important about where the patient and user voice sits in this. I would say that I'm Health Watch in Nottinghamshire, we are the voice of patients and service users, and how that is made meaningful in our process. We've talked about this as a health and wellbeing board over the years, of how we engage with individuals and citizens in these developments, and I really urge us to think about that as this is our plan, and it's going to be something that absolutely is our opportunity to take our services closer to the people that they serve, and having a democratic approach to how those people have a say in the way those services are developed, I think is really important. So in the governance arrangements, I absolutely would like to see something where independent voice of the users of our services are represented.
Yeah, independent voice, patient's journey, etc. That's always exceptionally important. There may be a case where we're going to have scrutiny to look at our ability to give people access to digital technology and whether or not we're doing enough to actually do that. So we'll keep that in mind and I'll discuss it with the director at some stage. Any further comments on that? Andy?
Thank you very much. I'm Councillor from East Midlands County Authority. Yes, just wanted to reiterate the importance there that we see in this partnership working and supporting plans like this. MPO has a new health duty on us that we have to consider health inequalities in everything that we do. And that's something we're trying to understand and work with colleagues across MCA, but it's important we work with yourselves to kind of identify what a place level is needed. And so I see a lot of our role as being there to try and support place-led plans and work with you to identify what levers MCA has to support them. It'll be different for each part of the region, but we're really keen to work with you on that.
Thank you, Andy. In the year that I was on the board, you had no health obligations. So I was sat there asking questions and looking for things to be done. And all I got was Claire shaking her head. No, we don't actually this year have any health obligations at all. So you're now telling me that you have been officially bestowed with an obligation. In which case, I can only say that the greatest single intervention that you could make, one of the top 20 World Health Organization's recommendations for any population anywhere in the world, is the introduction of fluoridation of drinking water. Can you bring that back to Clifford, Andy? Make sure that you prioritise that. I have talked to her till she's blue in the face, but she had no obligations, but she does have now. Right, so I'm going to say fantastic in terms of what we've covered in the neighbourhood plans, etc. There, I was almost going to complete.
I thought you might be.
I'm going to make an exception, Councillor.
Oh, that's very nice.
I'm going to allow you to finish the questions. Go ahead.
Obviously, I'm very pleased with the ambition in the integrated neighbourhood plan to prevent illness earlier, to sort it out, and to focus on keeping people well rather than treating illness, which often means hospital admissions, which are really under stress at the moment on the situation. About preventative action, are we working totally in partnership with organisations that deal with obesity, alcoholism problems, drug misuse, exercise projects, which are all mental health and of course priority people that are priority groups, what they feel as. Are we working totally in partnership with them? Are we getting the necessary information? And when will we get something to say that this is the work we've done and this is the problems we think we've sorted out if we follow the actions from the groups that we're involved in? And the next thing, I just wanted to know what you mean. You say your aim is to improve routine care through better GP access and to expand the roles of pharmacists and to include urgent community response. Of these three items, perhaps you could explain what you mean by urgent community response. And the GP access is even harder to obtain by introducing. They've just started introducing online bookings, as you know, with a number of difficult questions for many pensioners. In fact, many pensioners are exasperated by the situation. And it's taken a month before obtaining a telephone call or a face-to-face surgery appointment. As I've already said, pharmacists also are very busy. They will have to, would they have time to do everything that after having a consultation with a patient to prescribe a medicine without going through the person's record? Prescribing anything without knowing what the person is all about, it's very dangerous. Very dangerous indeed. What sort of issues have been answered or questions have been put about that?
Absolutely. Would I like to be a pharmacist standing at a counter trying to make a diagnosis of somebody?
Absolutely.
In a couple of seconds and prescribe them some. It's a real challenge, and I think that that's really one that we'll have to deal with as we go forward. It is interesting, John, that 50% of appointments and doctor surgeries are not actually with doctors; they're with nurses, they're with healthcare assistants.
Oh yeah.
So what people say, I want to get an appointment with a GP. It's not normally what they need, and therefore what will be expanding what they need into other areas like the optician, like the pharmacist, etc., except that they don't know that that's what they need. So I think the base of the provision of service will expand across the bottom of the pyramid as it moves up towards those people who do actually need to see that. Urgent care is occurring all the time, commissioned to go out to see people with urine infections that falls, commissioned by us to go out to prevent unnecessary hospital admissions. And it comes under the Better Care Fund, which I'm going to go into in a moment or two. So I'm going to say, Vivian, do you want to add to that?
So I can cover some of the points around some of those preventative services, but some of those, sorry Alex, I'm looking over to you for some of the other specifics around NHS response. And I think you're right, there will be some of it covered in the Better Care Fund, so we might want to put some there. But to just give some assurance in terms of some of the risk factors that you talked about in terms of alcohol, healthy weight, all of those things, smoking. We know that there's some of the highest risk factors that we have for premature mortality or early death. And the public health grant allows us to commission some really high quality services around that. So for those of you that aren't aware, we have an integrated wellbeing service delivered by ABL that works across the county. It has specific objectives about working in our populations that have our greatest needs, or most deprived populations. And that delivers a whole range of services, ranging from smoking cessation to weight management to low-level alcohol support. We also do have some broader support services around substance use and some other ones, and I'm very happy to give some more details on those. But what I would just like to highlight is one of the best places to get information around what services are available for your constituents or your communities and patients is the Your Nots directory, which is given an overall approach around what services are available, and that doesn't just include public sector services, it's also linking in and having a really good support from our voluntary social enterprise community as well. So yeah, that would be a really good place if people want to know what services are available and how to get them.
And of course, everybody's got access now to social prescribing, to direct them to a multitude of things, which are positive things for mental health, positive things for physical health, and has become exceptionally popular.
Can I just say, Chairman, that last point, I know all the information is fantastically given out, but again, what successes have happened? Can you give me some information? Meetings, what you're actually performing, what's your performance?
So we have a contract with ABL which provides drug, alcohol, weight, etc. And basically say what's the outcome figures for the people that you see, etc. That type of public health outcome framework type thing. I'm sure we could bring that back at some stage, if you wouldn't mind.
So we will be bringing later on in the year the report you're talking around, an update on the public health outcomes framework, and that's the national indicators which go through. I say there's hundreds of them in terms of what our specific outcomes are. So it might be things like we've talked about, what proportion of children are at a good level of development is one indicator. You might have something around smoking prevalence. You might have something around how many people are active, what's our obesity prevalence, those sorts of things. So that's the report we're going to bring you. It'll probably be with autumn, winter time, which will show us what progress we've made and also what interventions we've had. If you want specific information around a specific level of services, from a public health point of view, those go through overview committee, and there's an update that goes through.
I'm on that as well.
Yeah, so you will have seen that. So there's fairly recently been a really comprehensive paper that's talked around the outcomes of ABL and the integrated wellbeing service. So if it's helpful, James, can we put to circulate that link? Because that paper will give you all of that information. But very happy to have some follow-up conversations if needed.
You just said that you're going to give an overall view of what's happening in the whole of the country. Can you also put it individually on Nottinghamshire into?
So sorry, that will be Nottinghamshire. So, but it will be comparing us to where we are compared to nationally with that. So that will be what the public health.
Right, lovely.
It is a while since you've seen public health outcome framework done, but I guarantee you I'll have it for you in September, full of a minefield of information. Brilliant. So I'm going to move directly. Who? Okay, last speaker, Helen.
Thank you. It's just to reassure Councillor Wilmott in terms of the partnership working between all those agencies, that your health lots, active lots, all the leisure providers, CGL, at the place level and at the primary care network level. There's great partnership examples of that. We're happy to share some of the.
Oh, lovely. Brilliant.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. With that, I move the recommendations. All those in favour? Thank you. And we move on to item number 9. So item number 9 is the Better Care Fund. Better Care Fund has been around since 2015. The NHS is only able to spend money on things that exist within the NHS. And therefore, in order for the NHS to support local authorities and to improve certain agencies, people to keep people at home, you have to do a special fund called Better Care Fund and do a Section 75 agreement which allowed NHS money spent outside the NHS in county councils, for example. That was a budget which, when I started, would have been in the tens of millions, and now is over 128 million pounds. It's a substantial amount of money. We've got various targets which will be in your Better Care Fund plan. How are we reducing emergency admissions with this? And I would say we're off track for that. How are we getting people out of hospital without unnecessary delays sitting around in the hospitals just because they haven't got the prescriptions? We're off track with that. And how are we doing for long-term admissions into residential care? We're on track. The difference between this report today is that we also have an addendum on it, providing a short statement setting out the rationale for better care funding to maximise integrated and preventative care in neighbourhood health social care services. That's an extra addendum which wouldn't be there normally speaking. I'm going to go over to Katie Ball. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. I was just going to add to that introduction. Hi, I'm Katie Ball, Director for Commissioning for Adults for Nottinghamshire Council. Anna's going to give you a lot more detail, but just to add to that introduction, so the Better Care Fund is £130 million. It is about working more closely together between the local authorities and the NHS. We're bringing 2 things today. One is Q4 performance. So you will see in the report that we have got actual numbers of people that we're talking about in terms of people that had emergency admissions to hospital, how many people were discharged when they were ready from hospital, how many people went into residential care, etc. And secondly, what is our plan for this year for that Better Care Fund? Reminding people, and this is quite a well-rehearsed route, that the submission dates for NHS England often fall out of kilter with our Health and Wellbeing Board, which is why often you are asked to ratify what's already been sent in nationally, but lots of people will have seen it before it goes. So these are the targets that we are given, but also just acknowledging that is a lot of money. But that money has actually become core funding that underpins a lot of our teams, a lot of our social workers, a lot of our health staff that are supporting people before they go into hospital, when they're in hospital, supporting people out, how people that have had a period in hospital might get their confidence and back to physical abilities and confidence to go back home fully, or for people that need a little bit more short-term support, and for some people going into more longer-term care. So it underpins a lot of our core teams. It also underpins quite a few of our preventative contracts, which I can talk more about, but an example of that would be support for unpaid carers that are looking after their family members. Really, really important that we make sure that the health and well-being of those carers is okay. So just to give a flavour of what is in there. So it is typical that we send our quarterly reports off in terms of performance, but also acknowledging that a plan going in this year, nationally, there's an attempt to join up the focus of how better care funding is used with the neighbourhood health planning and bringing that together under health and wellbeing boards. So there is an acknowledgement nationally that for this year it will feel very similar in terms of the spend and where that's going to the previous years, because it's underpinning core teams and because it's an evolving picture around those neighbourhood plans. But over the space of this year, although it might feel very similar, we will start to do some of that planning in line with looking at how we can be more innovative and start shifting that dial to greater prevention. So I just wanted to add that in. I'm going to hand to Anna to talk that through.
So just before you do that, you talked about money going into prevention in terms of developing the neighbourhood plan, which is, we're all wondering, where's the money for the prevention going to come from? Most of the 128 million is transactional, in that it's already all out there being done with, as opposed to here's 100 million if you know you like it. Is there a laxity in there that genuinely releases money that you're talking about that we're going to be using in prevention in the neighbourhood plan, just before we get over to you, Anna?
At the moment, that money is funding a lot of our core teams. And we know that the whole challenge nationally over the last 15 to 18 years, we've seen the money in our health and care system shift from the preventative end to the acute end. So it's a massive challenge, not just for the Better Care Fund, but for everything that we do. So I don't think it's something we can do alone in the Better Care Fund, but the Better Care Fund has to be one of our vehicles to help us do some of that thinking. At the moment, we only put the minimum contributions in locally. We could, we don't need to think about this immediately, but as part of our bigger picture planning, we might want to think about our ambition of how we pool funding as a health and care system. We will certainly want to think about where we've done some really good pilot work. For example, locally, we've had a frailty hub. We've got lots of things that we've been trialling, but we've had a whole range of teams working together to support people who might have started to have some falls, might have started to have some difficulties, where there's a whole range of different perspectives coming together in a multi-agency team, doing some interventions, and that new tech like virtual stethoscopes for people, so they don't have to come to the GP or the hospital, but also balance work, lots of things that we're good at, but bringing it more tightly together and looking at which things are having the bigger impact in stopping people coming into hospital. I think what we all would want to get around is that there are so many opportunities to think about prevention earlier and making those decisions collectively about we can't do everything at once. So where are the points that are going to have the bigger impact for certain groups is going to be really important.
And we tend to do things because we've always done them.
Yeah.
But we haven't always done them because they've worked. It's just that we've always done them. Fantastic. Over to you, Anna.
Can we just go to the next slide, please? So as Kelvin said, we've submitted our quarter four report, so it's our end of year report. We have to send back to NHS England. And unfortunately, the first time was slightly off track with some of our targets. We're normally pretty on track with it. So the first one's around our emergency admissions. So our target is about 400-ish of our target for 100,000 population. What we do know, when we look actually underneath that data, we can see that it's being really driven by the fact we've got that aging population. We're seeing more people coming through with things like frailty, falls, dementia, so all the stuff that Kate talked about. So it gives us that real insight into how people are starting to come through our services. When we can start to make interventions, because actually if we could start to track people through a journey, we can see if we didn't have an intervention at this point, this might not have happened. So actually getting under some of this data is really, really helpful for us to target what we want to do in the future. We're also off track slightly, or quite a significant way, I guess, under our discharge to usual place of residence, and in terms of our delays. So we know that things have slowed down actually over this last year. So we're doing some digging as a system on some of that to see what's actually impacting there. So what we do know is that we've seen the growth in the number of people coming through again. So obviously if you see more people, but you've only got the same amount of staff, you've only got so much capacity to go around, which is going to have an impact. So doing some of that system planning around some of that work. We also know within there that winter had a particular impact this year. We saw a lot more people come through the winter period. And the people that were then being discharged as a result of that were slightly more complex in terms of their needs, so it was slightly more complex in terms of getting people back home. We also know that we had some slight delays in there around some things that can make a difference in really, so things like pharmacy delays as an example. So we're doing some work as a system to look at how we actually stop those happening in the future and improve that pathway for people. Good news is that our admissions to residential homes are on track. So we've seen a reduction in people entering residential care onto residential care, and that has been seen year on year for the past few years. So that's really good for us all. So overall, just to say, we are seeing increasing demand, we are seeing increasing pressures, but we are having a look at what we can do differently in that space to see how we can stop this getting worse in the future. Just go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So as part of our submission for our Q4 reporting, because it's at the end of the year, we have to do a little bit of a reflections in there. So we do a bit of a what worked well and where are there some opportunities in the future. So although we're slightly off target with our discharges, we do know that we've got quite a strong process actually in there. We have our transfer of care hubs, the multidisciplinary teams, they work really well together. So in terms of what's going well, actually that co-work and that co-location is working really well. We've got really good data sharing across our system. So we've got what we call one version of the truth. So we've got lots of information we can share between partner agencies, and that really helps with our discharge planning in that space. We are doing that deep analysis of those delays, so we can actually start to work at each of the hospital levels, so we can see it across the board and make, because there's different things impacting on different systems, so to look where we can make those changes going forwards. And it's also been an expansion of the urgent care hub coordination, so looking at alternative pathways to hospital. How do we help people to remain at home? How do we not have to send everybody in to have wall, especially if they've not had a visa dangerous for? So we're looking at that as part of that urgent care review, but also across the sector. So how do we work with our care teams to do some of this work as well, to make a bit of real-time assessments for people? Within this space, we've got some really strong partnerships, so we work really closely with our LCD partners, but also our other wider partners, so people like EMAS, for example, around that hospital. We do have some challenges, we're always having challenges. We've got workforce capacity across the system, so we see more people coming through, and the same amount of people to do that work, so there are some workforce demands in there. We do have that continued growth in that emergency demand, but some of the other things we've talked about today will help in that space as well. So that access to pharmacy first, go to GP, we don't always have to transfer people like that before. And there are some wider system pressures in there as well. Go to the next slide. So as Katie said, our plan for next year for the BCF is looking quite similar to the ones we've had in previous years. The contributions have remained pretty much static, no major changes in there to the funding model, and the focus remains the same. So it's still around prevention, the avoiding the hospital admission, that time of discharge from hospital, and supporting people to maintain or regain independence. So our priorities for this year, as they've been for previous years, is looking at how we reduce those avoidable admissions, and we're looking at that collectively as a system. It's not just a social care thing to do, it's not just a health care thing to do, it's lots of things that we can do together. Looking at that hospital discharge flow, so how do we maintain that flow through the system, stop people getting stuck in hospital, but that really does link into preventing people going in the first place, because we've only got so many beds, so many doctors, so many nurses to do lots of that work. Reducing again that admission to long-term residential care, we really want people to be able to people see, so better in their own beds, make better recoveries in their own homes. So we want to avoid that residential care where it's not needed. With an acknowledgement that for some people it is absolutely the right place, the best place for receiving care and support where needs arise. Over the course of the next year, we're going to be looking at how we align more with that neighbourhood health model, thriving communities programme. So as Tom said, things are starting to emerge. We're also starting to see an emergence in what the better care fund's going to look like in the future, what the targets are going to be around that. So we're going to work closely together to all of that together over the community. We have been given the same targets for the next year in terms of things we need to report against. So we'll still be reporting against emergency admissions, discharge performance and residential admissions. What we've also seen this year is there's not optional targets around reablement, so how many people have been reabled, who have been into council reablement services. just the council wants rather than the total lot of real services. Just go to the next slide. Thank you. So we will continue with our BCF schemes around proactive care, the discharge services, reablement, things like our MIS service, our carer support, which is really important, our home adaptations through the discharge disabled facilities grant, and our tech offer. And within all of that, although they look quite static, there's not lots of work happening in each of those. So there's always new technology coming on the market. For example, we're always working with our carers through co-production to look at how we could do things bigger, better, differently for people and get better outcomes. So those are the main themes remain the same. There is work happening underneath each of those themes as well. Working together obviously with our NHS partners, but also our voluntary sector partners and people with lived experience, because those are the people who can absolutely tell us where things work, where things don't work, and where we can make a difference. We do have some risks in there that we need to take into account. So as I said, we do have this ageing population, and that is going to continue. We know, for example, the numbers of people with dementia is significantly going to increase over the next 20 years. We've still got the same amount of workforce in there, and we've got those financial pressures across the system. So we need to balance those short-term pressures with that long-term transformation, because we still need to meet people's needs in that short term to move forwards. So just in terms of recommendations, there are just two for the board, and that is to ratify the protocol return and the BCF plan for this year.
Thanks very much indeed for that. You finished by saying, I wonder what the Better Care Fund will look like in a couple of years. You can't actually say that without actually having some idea as to what the answer to that might be. But your slides all said the same sum of money with the same goals to do the same things. So it could be that you wonder what it will look like in a couple of years' time. Might be looking exactly the same unless somebody does something. What do you think it'll look like?
I think Katie wants.
Katie, okay, what do you?
What I'd like it to look like is less people needing to come out of hospital because we're preventing more people going in. So I'm just going to give some examples. One area that is a game changer is technology. There's so much kit now. So a tiny example that could have quite a big impact, but we've not tested it fully yet, is in our care homes. There are lots of people that have a fall above their head and go to hospital. Some of those people have got dementia. If we don't know if they've bumped their head or not, or if the care staff don't know, then on that risk assessment, they're going to take them to hospital. And that's not a great place for someone with dementia to be sitting if they didn't need to be there. We now, or care homes, some care homes have got technology. So it might be thermal imaging technology that is actually recording how somebody fell. So you can then see that, so you can see if they hit their head or not. It protects dignity because it doesn't show everything, it just shows the outline. If we were, as a system, this is a really small idea, and I think this is illustrative of, there are loads of ideas, we need to have a look at some of those. If the care home had funded capacity to be watching that thermal imaging for people that are falling, at the moment all the care staff are really busy doing things. That's something to test about. That could stop a certain percentage of people then needing to go into hospital. If we did that on a big scale and it worked, that could be really beneficial for those people, but also the hospitals. And that's when you start to look at a collection of things that can start to impact on where you're spending your money and what you can close and shift. Making that sound really easy, it's not. So that would be one small example. Also, there's something around, if some of that tech could mean that you don't have to have care staff going in always through the night, which is, so the 4 or 5 o'clock call in the morning, we're all in our line to sleep phase, more likely to wake us up, then you feel groggy all day. Actually, I wonder how much, if we were to replace with tech, people would feel better in the day. That's a really tiny example. So what I would want to see is things like, we've got a frailty hub pilot that is getting some really good early indicators. We've got ideas from a range of places, including our external care staff. bit by bit, let's choose some of those things and build and add them into a strategy. There's never one magic thing that makes a difference, we all know that, but it's about us looking at which things are more likely to have a bigger difference, testing them out, and building some more local evidence around that. So for me, truly looking at those preventative opportunities. We talked about dementia quite a lot in this space, and it is really important. It's a really important theme. Understanding people's journeys as well, the journey of somebody with mild cognitive impairment, and then getting that diagnosis of dementia, and also the carers with them. There are lots of great help, but it can feel a long time between some of those islands of support. There are some real opportunities in those journeys for people, for us to do something a bit different and to maximise independence where somebody is at. And vascular dementia and starting to fall and stopping doing your own shopping. There are things that can then help, that we can be putting in quicker. So I think we have to have that hope, don't we? There's a lot we can do, but it's a big question together.
Yes, a good example. And of course, the screens that you've got your sensors on, there can be one person obviously looking at multiple screens, and they may not even be on location. They could be in a central hub somewhere. Sarah.
Thank you. Yeah, just want to raise, it's a time thing for Health Watch has got a current survey out at the moment that's looking at the patient's experience of hospital discharge. So if you know any of your constituents that have had an experience of discharge from Nottingham University hospitals, there is a current piece of research out about that and can experience. The reason for that is that there is a partnership project at the moment, absolutely looking at how the voluntary and community sector can support delayed discharge. We're basing this mainly in the city and at MUH, Queen's Medical and City Hospital, but I think the learning from it will be really relevant to better care funding in the county. One of the things that we've done, it's a pure piece of research, it's not a pilot, it's not looking at what we might do here in Nottingham, but what it is showing is where the voluntary and community sector gets involved in hospital discharge, we actually can save the NHS a huge amount of money. You mentioned one of the biggest issues is pharmacy delays. Many of us who've been in hospital have had to stay in another night because our drugs weren't ready. In several areas around the country, the voluntary sector have got bike riders that will take those medicines to people's homes after they've been discharged. There's issues that we've found that we've done really. We've talked with everybody across the system. Social care are telling us one of the biggest issues getting people out of hospital at the moment is a housing issue in terms of vermin and infestation and holding, and one of the biggest issues there. So we know that's a massive issue. So again, working with housing colleagues to understand that. But from a neighbourhood health, and I know we've got the workshop, this is where the voluntary and community sector can really make a difference. When there's nobody at home to take that person in, when they've come out of hospital, nobody to put the heating on, nobody to get a pint of milk in the fridge, that's where the voluntary and community sector can really make a difference. So this is where this piece of research I think is going to really show, what can be done. In this county, there is currently no voluntary and community sector services supporting hospital discharge. The Age UK one has just had its funding cut. Is that now being reinstated? Anna saying
we do have a specific service that's our supported hospital discharge service that does lots of those things that you discussed, Sarah. That is still ongoing, and we fund that actually through an element of better care fund.
Right. So that's the thing. So that's what we've understood. There's very little though from the voluntary and community sector in this county and in the city compared to other parts of the country. So this is a piece of research being done with Nottingham Trent University, the ICS itself, MUH part of this, and Nottingham CBS. Health Watch again is being brought into partner to do the independent patient experience to understand what the impact is in one of those people who doesn't get to go home on the medically fit to do so. So please have a look on our website, Health Watch, if you can fill in that or tell people about that survey. It'd be really useful, and we'll obviously share that with yourselves, Katie, in terms of that research and keep you in the loop.
Fantastic, thanks, Sarah. Of course, the one thing I've probably noticed in terms of Sherwood Forest hospitals, at least, is everybody's got the discharge lounges now. So you don't have to sit on the ward anymore waiting in your bed for your medicines. You move down to this lovely, clean, very comfortable chairs to sit and wait for your discharges. And I've known a lot of people who've gone home and a taxi has brought their medications out to the house. So those things are going on. Who have I got? I've got Vivian Robbins.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose my point links back to some of the conversations we had earlier around the work plan, because I think for every time that the BCF comes up to the board generally has a conversation around how they'd like to be more involved in that. And I think we're seeing similar things today. So I suppose what I'd just be really keen to think around is absolutely acknowledge that this one is a retrospective sign off, but you talked about there's more opportunities for 27, 28. So is there something that we can start committing to now to plan so that actually we can be well informed before a submission for next year, aligning with the work around the neighbourhood health plan? I'm thinking workshops or something like that. So I just wanted to wonder, can we start thinking about that now rather than leaving it and then having the same thing next year possibly, please?
Yes, we are already thinking about that now. I think we need to be honest that this is still a local authority and NHS core funding stream, and that's really important. But we absolutely fully welcome the alignment of thinking much more strongly about prevention between neighbourhood planning, better care fund, health and wellbeing boards as a triangle. And we've already started thinking about how do we start to create the right working group and some senior governance this year to take us through that process so that we look at those things together, and that's got to be under the health and wellbeing board. So yes, and we wouldn't just wait until the end of the year.
Sorry, Vivian, were you making a preemptive recommendation for the work programme, which we are going to get on to shortly? You are, okay. Andrea.
Thank you. A few of my points have been covered already, but what remain are that there was some really good work done, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, under the Frailty Programme Board at Nottinghamshire ICB, where there were presentations around good evidence-based good practice, including very memorably for me the impact of tackling loneliness presented by Clifford Stevenson, that I think is worth revisiting and developing the new plans. There is, of course, it needs to be said, we're now seeing it, the impact of the reduced resourcing of prevention work outside of clinical pathways. And I do believe that the hospital discharge work has been, supported hospital discharge work has been reduced. That's how we're experiencing it in Bassetlaw anyway, around the Emperor Connect service and the impact that's having on discharge. The Frailty Help you reference, I don't know which one it is, but we had an excellent one in Bassetlaw, funded through HIP, again, lots of good practice there and impact has already been demonstrated. And within Bassetlaw, echoing what Sarah said, housing is a massive delay to discharge, not just the issues that you speak about, Sarah, but the adaptations needed and early days discussions. But last week, our portfolio holder in Bassetlaw District Council talked about piloting a scheme where some houses are prepared with those kind of adaptations, because it takes time to make them, and that delays discharge, so temporary relocation. So lots of good stuff going on. So let's not reinvent it. I'm sure you've got it all already, but we can send it on to you.
Much appreciated, Andrea. I would send it on anyway and just let people have it. I have two more speakers. 2.5 was that? 2.5 job. Yeah. So I'm going to go to Caroline first.
Hi. My just concern is that it has brought to my attention, but I haven't got the facts on it. But I understand the lack of a social worker in Newark is causing a knock-on delay to discharge both in Newark and Kingsmill because of it going through. So there are delayed discharges due to people not being prepared to get out of Newark So does that come under delays or how we look at it?
I think, I'm not close to that, but I know that Guy, our DAS, and Emma, our director of our operational teams, have been having a conversation in Newark. So I think there's might be some different views around that, so it just needs understanding and unlocking. But I think people are talking and trying to sort out whatever it is.
Good.
Dr. Sahota.
Hi, thank you. I just had 2 questions, very broad actual, strategic. So with the DLN ICB merger, what's the risk to the BSF fund as it currently sits? Because my understanding is it's a central Nottinghamshire focus fund currently. And the second part of that is we've discussed quite a bit, I think rightfully so, about the neighbourhood plan. And I just wondered whether there was maybe scope to consider where there could be even a devolution of budget or even thinking to those neighbourhoods. Because, you know, my experience often when people are having emergency admissions, etc., there are locally, there is a lot of knowledge about why that is happening, why it's happening with certain care homes, for example, why that might be happening in a certain population. So just to really feed that in to the neighbourhood plan. Thank you.
Thank you. We can give a joint or not joint answer, team-ball answer. I think we're not far enough yet. I think there's going to be a challenge for our new ICB cluster in terms of how do you do things once at that cluster level and principles, etc., and agreeing how principles like equity, but then actually having that sensitivity to place. And so for us, thinking neighbourhoods in Nottinghamshire, a really good example would be support for carers. We're going to have slightly different organisations, different voluntary sector groups here to Derbyshire or to Lincolnshire. And we need to make sure that even though the principles might be planned at that whole cluster level, and we might think about hopefully resourcing together at that level, that locally into those neighbourhood plans, we've got that co-produced with carers and with our voluntary sector and local providers. I think that's what I'd hope to see. Do you agree, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely agree. And just a couple of points of clarity. So the 3 integrated care boards aren't merged. So we are working together and have a joint management team, but we are still legally separate organisations. So the funds that go into the Better Care Fund for Nottinghamshire aren't, you know, either feeding into Derbyshire or Lincolnshire or even benefiting from those. It's still kind of separate. We are on a national policy direction towards merger, and that's intended to happen over the coming period. As and when that happens, we'll have to kind of understand how some of those statutory arrangements will work, but definitely the intent will be, because of a administrative kind of body construct being merged or changed, that doesn't mean that we kind of disrupt. Definitely doesn't mean we want to disrupt or unnecessarily change our commissioning arrangements or services that are on place. It should give us, as Katie says, that kind of ability to scale and kind of learn from the best. And whilst I think it's probably unlikely we will devolve funding to kind of neighbourhood level, we will absolutely want to make sure that we take the benefit of the scale, but then are able to deliver the right locally nuanced services in the different areas.
Could I add one more thing in?
Carry on.
Thank you. So I think that there are opportunities as well, thinking at scale and thinking with our MCO colleagues. So I'm going to go back, I think Sarah, it might have been you that was talking about housing, or was it you, Andrea? And how useful, how brilliant it would be if we had houses that were built that were able to be adapted really easily for people. And that's the kind of thing when we start working on that bigger level together, about planning housing together that can be adapted, meaning that then houses can adapt with people rather than moving people around. So I think, again, thinking on those bigger geographies and opportunities that we've got, that's a good example, hopefully.
Thanks very much again, and thank you, Dr. Sahota. And I'm just sort of wondering what's going to happen to the South Notts place-based partnership in the great new world of integrated neighbourhood health. You may be the additional funding that we get into integrated neighbourhood health. Watch this space. I'm going to go to Councillor Wilmott.
Thank you very much.
The final speaker before Councillor Wilmott.
I mean, it is disappointing that the issues that are off track There's no doubt about that. And it's nothing to do with the doctors and nurses. And it's just the system is under so much pressure. It's absolutely unbelievable. But what concerns me, having read this report about why it's off track, it does seem to me to be that there's a number of situations where the form filling is actually a problem. Form filling. I don't know. It's really, and it says that problem. They're going to focus on the problem by embedding reliable, timely, and high-quality information sharing across the whole discharge journey, connecting the patient to the hub pathway providers and families before reading through the lines. It seems partnerships are not working effectively, and form filling is holding up discharge to many organisations. I think the most informative situation is the D2A forms, which are supposed to be one of the most important issues on person that's been discharged. It's also behind and have it not being correctly, the form not correctly being done. I mean, what's that all about? You know, it's and I say, I already talked about the pharmacy process. And it says that the pharmacy process is causing a problem, a delay in getting people discharged. I mean, what's that all about? What's being done about that? I mean, some people reading through that, you've got to look behind the scene to what this is actually telling you, and it just means the administration part of the work is not being done correctly at times.
Yes, and it's always been thought that the problem lay in the community, but a tiny percentage is related to local authority and the inability to actually have social care packages for people when they go home. And as you rightly point out, the vast majority of delays are entirely down to hospital procedures, etc., rather than anything related to the community. So I'm going to thank you for that, Councillor Wilmott. I'm going to move to recommendations. All those in favour? Thank you. I'm going to move on to item number 10. It's rare that I find myself in a position of having a luxury of time to discuss the programme. Normally people have gone out the door and I'm saying, hang on, I've not done the work programme. But we really have a bit of time to do the work programme. And never has it been more important. And we did start off this by saying, you know, we have to up the number of meetings we've got to up the agenda, we've got to up the participation, we've got to recognise what we want in our next work programme. If I look at it at the moment and say that if you look at today, and you may all have a copy of this or not, that this workshop was the June 17 workshop, and the next workshop is not until September 20 to 23rd of September. It suggests at the moment that we'll be looking at ambition 3. It suggests that we'll be looking at what do we want from those strategic needs assessments. Those strategic needs assessments are going to identify areas that we need to look at and want to direct our attention to. Do we have a problem? We're looking at the Better Care Fund, and now I think everybody has been quite excited by something which traditionally had been just a tick box exercise. Now we want to see how dynamic it could be. Anna, now we want to see what it's going to transform into in the next couple of years' time. When I look at this, I myself put forward the idea that I want to know what the short and long-term physical and mental impacts of sanitisation by flooding is on residents in Nottinghamshire. And I said that when I've talked to them and visited them and gone and seen them, that I've had people who have been displaced from their house. They've been diabetics, the diabetes has gone out of control, their HbA1c has gone up, they've become depressed, they eat too much, they become obese, they drink too much, they become alcoholics, they struggle in their relationships, they get divorced, they get separated, and the long-term health and physical and mental health sequelae of flooding. And I typically tell people it's not about the water. The water comes and the water goes, but to stand with a person who feels a prisoner in their own house that they once loved, they loved that house, and now it's a prison for them and they hate it. I think it's a body of work that's never been covered. I think it's a body of work that deserves to be covered. Who hasn't got a house somewhere in their patch that hasn't been flooded? I don't know, unless you live up on the top of a mountain. So we're going to put forward a number of things such as that. The other one that I was asked to consider was whether or not we have a significant challenge with regards to inequalities and unmet needs amongst the migrant population of the county in Nottinghamshire, and in particular, have we ever actually identified, looked at, and challenged ourselves with regard to what we do that, be it unaccompanied asylums and children, be it people who don't speak English and rely on translations, be it digital exclusion, etc. It's just an area, as the chair of migration for the East Midlands, I see this come across my desk all the time, and therefore I'm focused on it. We have Caroline done a lot of work with Nottingham Trent universities on bespoke quantitative and qualitative studies around the experiences that people have had, and I just think it's an unmet need at the present moment. I really want us to return to fluoridation. I've been talking about fluoridation for years, and I'm still talking about it. Now I've got a new friend on the East Midlands Combined Counties Authority. I don't feel so alone anymore. So I do think we need to make a repeat visit down to see the Secretary of State for Health, now that he's just settled into his new office, to make sure that our application that I hand delivered to them over a year ago is still on his desk and is going to be addressed. So I'm going to throw it out there and say, what are you thinking? What do you want on your agenda? We're going to bring back in September ambition number 1 again. We're going to bring back in September public health outcome framework. We're going to bring back in September joint pharmaceutical needs assessment, and we're going to increase the number of meetings that we've got in order. This is transformative. We all agree if we get the integrated neighbourhoods right, it could be the biggest thing since, as I said, primary care networks, which were an enormous success. Alex, over to you.
You've left us about three minutes on the kind of future years agenda, John, with all those ideas. But I think probably in the workshop that follows this, we'll drive out some of the elements from the development of the neighbourhood health plan that we'll need to populate into that. But we should kind of pencil that in. Yeah. The other one that's occurred to me in the September meeting, I wonder if it would be helpful. I would certainly find it really helpful to have a report on the. We'll have had the decision on local government reorganisation by then. It'd be really good to have a report on the implications, consequences, opportunities, risks for the delivery of health and wellbeing services, both council services, but also those that are jointly delivered with partners, where we're going to have a whole load of new boundaries to wrestle with. So for me, that's an opportunity to have lots of exciting maps up on the screen. That could hopefully, I think, be a useful discussion.
I think you hit the bullseye there, Alex. What will things be like after local government reorganisation, and what will be our implications for that? So with that, I'm going to ask James, who already has a list of stuff, to add to what you said, Alex, and other people have contributed. Go ahead, James.
Thank you, Chairman. So I did send out an email last month in terms of people to send your ideas for the work programme, and some of you have contributed to that, and that is thank you for making those contributions. So we did have some topics based around physical activity and system development for various priorities, programmes, investments across Nottinghamshire. System support for volunteering is one of the 5 ways to wellbeing, and as well focus on children, young people, mental health and wellbeing. And again, some of the themes of physical activity rates, impact of vaping on health, which some of the committees have covered the impact of vaping, and it was covered at an overview committee recently. Food and fuel insecurity, the impact of social media. And Alex, you also recommended neighbourhood health service development and the role of health and wellbeing development in neighbourhood health services. We also had suggestions around the what's currently offered towards helping people as suffering with dementia and how to address growth in this area in a multidisciplinary way. Looking at housing and care supported living, and looking at how future utilities and having housing responsibilities, as well as the impacts around MCA and the ICB's role in health versus integrated neighbourhood health and care teams. So with all those suggestions, public health officers will do the work in the background and formulate some concrete proposals that we can get into the proposed work programme for 2026-2027. Because the one that has been published is stuff that we usually cover across, so there's standing items, but what you have suggested to us, hopefully they continue to suggest to us before September, that we can go into that process. And again, there's also stuff that's come out of this meeting as well. So if you mentioned about the report on public health outcomes, so that will be factored in some point in the autumn and winter, and it was obviously one
potentially a BCF workshop.
A BCF workshop. Thank you.
Go ahead,
just to flag this out, two submissions from Bassetlaw, and I'm not sure the second one landed, and that was regarding end of life and the impact that is having on discharge and dying well.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Kelvin Wright asked about whether we should be more involved in Stop the Bleed and whether or not we could do anything around the children of the armed forces as a specific group. Anybody else got anything they'd like to say? Got all of that, James?
Yeah.
Excellent. So the recommendation is that to assist the board in managing its business effectively. I think we've got a lot of business there. We're everything for it. I'm going to say we're now in the assembly rooms through there, and there's biscuits, coffee, and tea, I believe, and then we'll move on to the workshop. Gedling, do you want to add anything? There we go. No? Okay, thank you all. Fantastic meeting. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you.